Today, I'm gonna try one of my favorite effects on this track I'm working on, which is a reverse reverb effect. Normally, this effect might take quite a few steps, reprinting tracks, cutting them up, reversing them, realigning them, but in this video, I'm gonna show you how to get this effect with just a few clicks in Supernova. And with all the advanced options we have in Supernova, we can actually explore a lot of different flavors of this effect. Let's get started. So here's the track I'm working on, and it's in this section that I want to give it some more motion. It's kind of a down section in this track, but we still need to give it some motion and drive it forward into the next section. And my idea is to use a reverse reverb on these pianos in order to swell from one chord into the next. Now, like I said, there's a bunch of different ways we could achieve an effect like this. We could print this track, cut it up, reverse each chord, but I'm gonna show you a really easy way to do it with Supernova so we can start experimenting with sounds even faster. First, I'm gonna duplicate this piano track. I'll copy the MIDI down, and on this duplicate, I'm going to load Supernova. So before we get started with tweaking, there's just a few things we need to set up. The first is we need to load the reverse delay algorithm. This is going to give us that reverse sound. Whenever I'm trying to go for this effect, I usually set a very low feedback, maybe even 0. And then the key is going to be finding the right delay rate in order to make it go from one chord into the next. You notice I also turned off ping pong. I usually don't want this to bounce from left to right. I just want it to be a regular delay. So I'm just going to play through it and try out some different delay rates until I get the one that feels right. So the half note matches this track perfectly. It's swelling from that one chord right into the next one. So for now, the delay side is set up how I want. But there's something to know about Supernova, which is we have these custom routing options. Now, by default, it's set up in parallel. So this is the reverb and delay engines running in parallel. But we also have these custom series options as well. So the first one will send from the output of the reverb into the input of the delay. Let's take a listen to what that sounds like. So already we're getting a really cool sound on that, but let's experiment with some different settings on the reverb side. Now, when we're going for this type of effect, we usually don't want any pre-delay. This is gonna just alter the timing, especially if we're sending it from the reverb into the delay. We usually want a 0 millisecond pre-delay. But as I mentioned that, I'm actually thinking it could be used for some cool effects, especially if you use this rhythmic. So this is gonna snap it to rhythmically relevant values for whatever session we're working on. So that can be very cool to play around with, but for now I'm gonna set it all the way down to 0. Now, the character of the reverse effect is going to be determined by whichever reverb algorithm we have loaded. I really like how it sounds with these big, massive reverbs, but sometimes I like using just a more realistic room, which is going to make it sound like that piano is just back in the room a little bit behind the main piano that's sticking out. So that sounds really cool. I might try some different rooms, like maybe even the drum room. This is a really dense room. And you can hear all that density around the early reflections is giving us that extra little bit of ramp up sound right going into the next chord. And it sounds really cool for this particular effect. So let's take a listen in the context of the beat. So So that creates a really cool texture. And when we blend it in just a little bit to the rest of the track, it's something that just pushes the feel of the track forward in a really nice way. Now, to keep this track evolving, I'm going to duplicate this piano again and place it back here when the beat builds up a bit more. So on this track though, with the rest of the beat in there, we don't want the full power of this piano reverse. We really just want to kind of filter it out. And that's where these delay filters will come in handy. Let's play around with these. And for this part, I might just want it on these second two chords. It feels like within the track, that's where I'm really wanting to feel that reverse happen. I love what this brings to the overall track. It's just another layer that keeps this mix evolving as we go from section to section. So there's obviously a ton of things we can experiment with here. We can play around with different pre-delay, different color on the reverb. We can choose entirely different reverb algorithms to get an entirely different reverse sound. We could also play around with some of these other SFX delays like Scrambler or Time Travel, which also incorporate some reverse elements in them as well. So there's a ton to experiment with just mixing and matching different algorithms in Supernova that can be really fun to play around with in a mix like this. So try this out next time you want to add a unique rhythmic layer to your track. If you enjoyed this video, give it a like, leave us a comment, and subscribe for more tutorials like this. And as always, happy mixing.